They paved over my driveway. Then I reminded them whose land this is. Let me tell you something about working land. You don't just own it, you earn it, season after season. My family has farmed the same property in rural Cambodia for generations. Rice in the wet season, cattle year-round, vegetables on the side. We sell at the local markets. Nothing glamorous, but honest work that keeps the family fed and the lights on. My wife and I built our house with our own hands. Concrete block, tin roof, nothing fancy. But it's ours, and we are proud of every square foot of it. Now, the layout of our property matters for this story. A dirt road connects us to the main highway about 1.5 miles out. A real road, wide enough for trucks and farm equipment. Our driveway branches off that road and runs along the edge of the property all the way to the house and our equipment area. That driveway is the farm's lifeline. Without it, the rice doesn't get to market, supplies don't come in, and the cattle truck doesn't move. It's not optional. For years, the land next to ours sat empty. Some family in Phnom Penh, the capital, had bought it as an investment and never touched it. Then, about 2 years ago, new buyers showed up. I'll call them the city couple. They rolled in driving a black Lexus SUV that probably cost more than every vehicle in our village put together. They'd made their money in imports, decided they wanted a countryside villa, the kind of people who want the idea of rural life without any of the reality that comes with it. Air conditioning, satellite dish, zero tolerance for anything that smells or makes noise before 8 a.m. The house they built was massive by local standards. 2 stories, painted bright white, big tiled patio out front. It stuck out like a country club in the middle of working farmland. I went over and introduced myself when they moved in. The husband barely looked at me, gave me a slow up and down like he was trying to figure out what I was. "So you're the farmer dash," he said. Not a question. A classification. I told him yes, that we grow rice and raise cattle, and if he ever needed anything, I was happy to help. He told me he'd need me to keep the noise down in the mornings. Roosters and tractors at 5 a.m. weren't what they were used to. "The roosters don't really take requests from me," I said. He didn't find that funny. The first few months were tolerable. They kept to themselves, we kept to ourselves. But I started noticing things. His wife would stand on that fancy tiled patio and make faces whenever I drove the cattle past. He started complaining to neighbors about the smell. Normal farm smells. Cows exist. They produce smells. This is not a news flash if you choose to build a villa next to a working farm. Then one morning I looked up from loading rice bags onto the truck and saw the husband walking slowly along the edge of my driveway. Hands clasped behind his back, studying the ground like a detective. "Can I help you?" I called out. He walked over with the kind of confidence you only see in men who've decided something is already settled. He pointed to the strip of driveway closest to his property. "I think this actually extends onto my land." I told him it didn't. My family had used this driveway in the same spot for longer than either of us had been alive. The boundaries were set decades ago. He shook his head slowly, the way a man does when he's decided you're too simple to understand the situation. "I had someone take a look dash," he said. "The measurements suggest your driveway encroaches onto my property by at least 3 meters. "Who took a look?" I asked. "A friend of mine. He understands these things." Not a surveyor. Not the land office. A friend who understands these things. I told him he was welcome to request an official survey through the local land office. He gave me that same dismissive nod and walked away. A week later, I came home from market to find 3 bright orange plastic traffic barriers, the kind you see on highway construction sites, planted in a neat row along the edge of my driveway. Not on his property. On mine. 3 meters inside my land. Like he'd decided to redraw the boundary with road cones. I picked them up and set them on his side. Next morning, they were back. I moved them again. They came back again. My wife started calling it the cone war. She said it with a laugh, but both of us knew this wasn't going to stay funny. He kept escalating. I caught him out there one afternoon with a construction worker, tape measure out, pointing and measuring while I watched from across the yard. He didn't even flinch. Just kept talking like I wasn't there. Like it was already done. I went over and told him plainly, "That land is mine. Whatever you're planning, stop now." He looked at me with what I can only describe as amused patience, the look of a man who's made his decision and is just waiting for you to catch up. "We'll sort it out dash," he said. Not long after, my wife and I had to travel to another city to care for a sick relative. We were gone for about 10 days. When we came back, I sat on my motorbike at the edge of the property and couldn't process what I was seeing. The entire stretch of driveway along the boundary had been paved over with fresh asphalt, smooth, professional, connected seamlessly to the city couple's parking area. And running right down the middle of what used to be my open driveway was a solid fence. Concrete posts sunk into the ground. Fence panels locked in place. They had annexed a chunk of my driveway while I was out of town. The work crew, I was told, had shown up the morning after I left. The husband told them it was his land. The workers had no reason to doubt him. I went straight to their door. The wife answered holding one of those fancy iced coffee drinks. I told her she needed to remove the asphalt and the fence. That was my land. She looked at me without a trace of concern. My husband had the boundary confirmed. That section is ours now. We improved it. Honestly, you should be thanking us. It looks much better. When the husband got back from Phnom Penh, same story. His friend had verified the boundary. When I demanded official documents, he didn't have any. No government stamps, no land office paperwork. Just a friend who understands these things. I told him to remove everything or I would take action. He actually laughed. What action? By the time anything goes through the legal system, we'll have been using this land long enough that it'll be ours by default. And here's the hard truth. He wasn't entirely wrong about the system. Property disputes in Cambodia can drag for years. Local authorities are reluctant to step into neighbor conflicts, especially when one side has more money and more connections than the other. He'd done his homework. He was betting I couldn't outlast him legally, and he may have been right. I went to the commune office. The chief came out, looked at everything, and told us to work it out between ourselves. I pushed harder. He said he'd look into it. In Cambodia, that usually means the paperwork lands in a drawer and collects dust. The district land office told me it would take months just to schedule an official survey, and enforcement after that would be a whole separate battle. My driveway was gone. I couldn't turn the cattle truck properly anymore, and the legal system was moving at the speed of a sleeping water buffalo. My wife could see I was at my limit. She told me something her grandmother used to say, which roughly translates to, "You don't fight a snake by chasing it. You make the ground it lives on unbearable." And that's when the plan came together. Here's something most city people don't think about when they move next to a farm. Farmers have access to resources the rest of the world would rather not consider. In my case, I had a lot of cattle. And cattle produce a lot of one particular thing in very large quantities. Manure. Composting is completely standard agricultural practice. Every farmer in Cambodia does it. You pile up manure, mix in rice straw and organic waste, and let it break down into fertilizer. It's legal. It's expected. And nobody, not the commune chief, not the health department, not the governor's office, can tell a farmer he can't compost on his own land. So I started composting. Aggressively. It was the middle of hot season, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit with humidity so thick you could chew it. Perfect conditions. The heat accelerates decomposition. The humidity traps the smell and holds it in place like a wall. I placed the first pile right along the property boundary, on my land, about 13 feet back from the fence line, well within my property. A big, fresh pile of cow manure mixed with rice straw and whatever other organic waste I had on hand. Fresh cow manure in tropical heat is a different animal from what most Americans picture when they hear the word manure. This isn't a mild country smell drifting past a fence in Indiana. In Cambodian summer heat with 90% humidity, it's a physical presence. It comes in waves. It gets into your clothes, your hair, and through any window you're foolish enough to leave cracked open. And it draws flies the way a ballpark draws crowds. Within 2 days, the wife was at my fence screaming. The smell was unbearable. The flies were getting into the house. This was intentional, she said. She was going to report me. I was calm. I told her I was composting agricultural waste on my own farm, which is what farmers do, and if she had concerns, she was welcome to file a complaint with the commune. She stormed off. The husband showed up that evening, sweating through his shirt, face red. "You need to move that pile." I told him he needed to move that fence and that asphalt. He said that had nothing to do with this. I told him it had everything to do with it. "You stole my driveway and I'm farming on my land. If you don't like farm smells, maybe don't steal a farmer's property. He threatened me, said he knew people. I told him I wasn't doing anything illegal and he was welcome to call whoever he liked. That night, I added a second pile, right next to the first. Over the next 2 weeks, I turned that entire strip of land along the boundary into what I can only call a manure wall. I had enough cattle to keep the supply coming, and 2 neighboring farmers were happy to let me haul their waste away for free. Farmers take care of each other out here. One neighbor who raises pigs showed up one afternoon with 2 cart loads from his pig pens and just winked at me as he unloaded. Pig waste makes cow manure smell like a country candle by comparison, and he knew exactly what he was doing. My wife, who is a practical woman, started adding all the kitchen scraps she'd normally compost separately, fish bones, vegetable waste, directly to the piles. Decomposing fish in Cambodian summer heat is something I would not describe to you in polite company. She'd carry the bucket out every evening, dump it on the nearest pile, and walk back inside humming to herself. The city couple, meanwhile, was suffering visibly. The wife started wearing a scarf over her nose and mouth just to walk to her car. The husband would step outside, stop dead the moment the smell hit him, and retreat back through the door. Their beautiful tiled patio, completely unusable. Flies everywhere. They filed a complaint with the commune. The chief came out again, walked over to my compost piles, looked at them, looked at me. "This is composting, Dash," he said. "Yes, Dash," I told him. "Agricultural composting for my rice fields." He glanced at the city couple's house, then back at me. His face gave away nothing. Commune officials in Cambodia are very good at that. He told them composting was a protected agricultural activity, and there was nothing he could do as long as I was on my own land. The husband lost it, started yelling about corruption, about nobody doing their jobs, about how much money they'd paid for that property. The commune chief walked away. He'd dealt with worse. The district health office came out. Same answer. Agricultural area. Protected activity. The police showed up, sniffed the air, and asked what the emergency was. The wife tried to explain that the smell was a form of assault. The officers looked at each other, looked at the compost piles, and left. At around month 2, the husband showed up at my door with an envelope of cash. He fanned it out like we were haggling at a car dealership. "This is more than fair, Dash," he said. "This is probably more than you make in months." That sentence told me everything I needed to know about how this man saw me. Not as a neighbor, not as a person, as something he could buy off with pocket change. I told him to keep his money and close the door. The next morning, I added the biggest pile yet. My oldest son helped me wheel it out in a cart and we stacked it right where the evening breeze would carry it straight into their bedroom windows. My son thought the whole thing was hilarious. We started naming the piles. The biggest one, we called the compensation. Around the 3-month mark, something important happened. An official surveyor finally came out and compared everything against our land title. My father, years ago, had gone through the trouble of getting our property registered as a hard title, officially on file with government stamps, documented, ironclad. It's the kind of thing you don't appreciate until you need it. The result, the fence and asphalt were entirely on my property, not even close to the actual boundary line. The city couple's friend who understands these things had been off by more than 10 feet. I added more piles. Then I started a second row, positioned so the prevailing winds would carry straight into their living room. I also started letting the cattle graze right along the boundary. Cows are not precise about where they do their business. These ones seemed especially drawn to the fence line. By month 5, the wife had essentially moved back to Phnom Penh full-time. The husband was at the house maybe 2 days a week. That bright white villa, that showpiece they'd built to announce their arrival, had taken on a faint brownish tinge from the dust and humidity mixing with everything else in the air. And then one morning I woke up to the sound of a work crew. I walked outside and watched as they pulled the fence posts out of the ground, loaded the panels onto a flatbed, and broke up the asphalt with a small excavator. The husband stood off to the side, arms crossed, face like stone, watching them dismantle his own illegal construction without a word to me. He didn't acknowledge me at all, just stood there and supervised the destruction of everything he'd built on someone else's land. When it was done, I had my full driveway back. The ground underneath was torn up and the post holes had to be filled in, but it was mine again. I spent the next week regrading and laying fresh gravel. My wife helped smooth it out. When we were done, it looked better than it had in years. The city couple never came back. They sold the house at a loss. Neighbors said they took a serious hit. The big white villa that was supposed to be their countryside escape sat on the market for a long time before it finally moved. They were right about one thing: the legal system is slow. But they made one calculation error. They assumed a farmer would fold. Farmers don't fold. We just wait out the season. And my cattle, for the record, have been especially productive lately. Just in case anyone else gets any ideas about my driveway,